Couple things coming up over the next 2 Saturdays. Next Saturday, men's prayer breakfast right here at 9 a.m. If you could come and join us, or if you have a friend that you would like to invite, just sign up back there. That helps us to be able to plan for it. The following Saturday, which is September the 28th, is the Walk for Life for the Pregnancy Center. There's information back there on the back table where they will be. If you have questions about it, you can see Anna. She's sort of heading it up for here. And there's a sign-up sheet back there. Maybe you can't walk, but you would like to support somebody. So that'll be, all that information is back there for you. All right? So, if you have a Bible and or an app that you'd like to turn to, I'm going to read a story out of Mark chapter 8 in a moment. But I want to talk to you about what it looks like to be hungry for God. Hungry for God. Matthew 5:6 says, "Blessed are those who hunger and thirst for righteousness. Hunger and thirst for righteousness, for they shall be satisfied." Righteousness is like an umbrella thing. This is like we hunger and thirst for the Lord to reign supreme, whether it is over all or at least, hopefully, at least in our lives. But there is a hunger and a thirst. If I said to you, "Are you hungry right now?" I wonder, like, what does that? But sometimes I say, "Oh, I'm starving," and I shouldn't, but I do. But I do know when I'm hungry. Interestingly enough, most of us don't have to think, am I? No, you know it, or you're not. When it comes to your spiritual life, are you hungry for the things of God, or hungrier for the things of God? This is the question. A few months ago, we had a guest evangelist with us here, Bruce Van Netta, and he's an interesting fellow, to say the least. And he has stories, unbelievable stories, in his revivals, and if you're not familiar with him, he was the one that had the truck to crush him, and he died several times, and just a miraculous New Testament, like miraculous, verifiable story medically, and just an amazing story. But he's also, I think, a very spiritually minded man. And when he was with us for those few days, he would have like words of knowledge, maybe prophetic, to speak about somebody. And he came to a few of you and like said that, right? He told you what the Lord was saying to him about you. He came to me a couple of times about our family. Like our kids, and he mentioned them, a couple of them, like by name, and he said, "This is what I think the Lord is saying to me about so and so." He said about James. He said at the time he didn't know James was my son. He said that worship leader. He said, "Now he's real. He's the real deal." And I said, "Yeah, he's like his dad, I think." And then he's like, "Oh, is that?" I said, "Yeah." So I just, explained. He said, "Well, let me take that back then. I must have not heard the Lord properly." But more than once, he would mention James. He's like, "No, that's authentic. He's authentic. He means that." And he said about Tucker. He said, "I think that boy's going to hear from God." And I said, "Well, I'm fills my heart, obviously, when somebody's talking about your kids." So he was with us at the house one night, and he never said anything about me, or like me or Rhonda. And so I didn't want to like pull something out of him, but I just noticed it's like he literally spoke of all four of my children and said something about like each of them, but nothing about us. And so we were just talking. I said, "Has the Lord ever said anything about like Rhonda and I?" And he was sitting in his chair, and he just, he said, "I don't know." He said, "Let me think about it." And he leans back in his chair, and he just closes his eyes. And he gets real quiet like this. And it was more awkward than this is right now. Rhonda and I are looking at each other like, and I mean, and then he looked and he said, "Nope." I said, okay. He said, nope, I got nothing. He said, what it, what it did, it sort of like validifies the other things that he said, because how hard would it be? Like for me, if you said, hey, give me a word for myself, I'd come up with something like, you're a good guy, or I mean something. But he's like, nope, I got nothing. And it just like, all right, I'll take that, I suppose. But it does validate like the stuff he'd said about others, because he certainly, in other words, he had to be hearing from the Lord. But then I said, what about our church, the church family? And he said, yes. He said, I got a word. He said, the first word that the Lord gave me when I came to your church service, he said, hungry. He said, your people are obviously hungry for the things of the Lord. And it just filled my soul so much. Because, like, if I sat to think a long time, like, Lord, what would I pray over our folks? What do I want for our folks? It is to be hungry for God. Because that's going to be different for everybody. Some will have a different starting point. Some will have a different sort of like maturity pace. And so it's going to be different for everybody. But the idea that you can be hungry for God. And that's what he would say. And he's at hundreds and hundreds of places. But the idea that it is hungry. So from that moment, I said, I want to bring that to you. And I want to talk about this idea of what it means to be hungry for God. So this has sort of been several weeks now, just in the marination process of like, what does that look like? What does hungry for God look like? There's a passage in Mark chapter 8, if you have a device or a Bible, or it's a little lengthy for the screen, so I'm just going to read it to you. This is one of the two feedings that Jesus did. And he probably fed a whole lot of other people at a whole lot of different times, but we know of two in particular, the feeding of 5,000 and the feeding of 4,000, and probably they were several more thousand than just those. But he gathers the people together, and I want you to see what it says about, this is the feeding of the 4,000. In those days, I'm in Mark chapter 8 and verse 1. In those days, when again a great crowd had gathered, and they had nothing to eat, he called his disciples to him and said to them, I have compassion on the crowd, because they have been with me now 3 days. 3 days, and have had nothing to eat. Now, I don't say it's hyperbole, but I mean, because they did say, hey, we got like, but for thousands of people, virtually nothing left. So there might be somebody hiding a little fish here or a candy bar there, but they've had nothing to eat. And now notice what Jesus says. If I send them away hungry to their homes, they will faint on the way. So they're that hungry. And it's been that long. And some of them have come from far away. Too far for me to send them out of here without feeding them something. Which means these people have to also take responsibility for the fact that they've found themselves now without something to eat. And what happened to this crowd? Like, if me and you're going somewhere, if we're on a hike, I'm going to say somewhere between the 3 to 7 minutes into the hike, I'm going to be eating on something, right? And if you got me 3 days and we haven't eaten, and I'm hiking farther and farther away from a food source, I got a lot of questions. And the only reason I want to go on the hike, or the only reason I want to camp, is to eat. I eat more when I'm camping than I do at any other. I don't know what it is. You're just sitting there, but it's just like, what are we going to do? I don't know. There's no TV to watch. Let's eat something, right? So these folk here, 3 days, they have now, and they are far from home, and they got nothing to eat. And Jesus all of a sudden feels, not all of a sudden, but Jesus feels responsible for them. And his disciples answered him, said, how can one feed these people with bread here in this desolate place? And he asked them, how many loaves do you have? And they said 7. And he directed the crowd to sit down in the ground. And he took the 7 loaves, and giving thanks, he broke them and gave them to his disciples to set before the people. And they set them before the crowd. And they had a few small fish. And having blessed them, the fish, he said that these also should be set before them. And they ate, and they were satisfied. Thousands and thousands of people, right? So obviously the main thing of this passage is thousands and thousands of people getting fed by so little. But I just want you to, for me, there's some principles here or some insight about being hungry for the things of the Lord, I think that we could learn something from. And they were satisfied, and look what it says, and they took up broken pieces left over, 7 baskets full, which means everybody got plenty. I mean, when was the last time you ate, and then you said after you ate, I couldn't eat another bite? That usually doesn't include dessert, but you said, I couldn't eat another bite. And that's what they did here. And so everybody got plenty, and they took up 7 baskets full. And there were about 4,000, and he sent them away. And immediately he got into the boat, and then it says they went over to another place. He gathered these folks together. What does it look like to be hungry for God? These dear people show us exactly what it is. I say exactly. They give us some really good insight about what it looks like to be hungry for the things of the Lord. Let me reason with you for just a minute. Number one, they showed risk over reason. I'm a reasoning kind of a fellow. And so that's usually my first go-to reaction to almost anything. The spiritual component of me, and I hope it doesn't upset you too bad, or I hope it doesn't disappoint you too bad, but the spiritual aspect of to me is most of the time the second thought. My first thought is reason. I want to reason something out. They showed risk because they were all putting themselves at risk. And they had families. These parents had children to be looking out for, and you're out going somewhere. And you know also, I mean, it's not like it's dawning on them like, you know what? We don't have any food. Well, they've been up on that piece of information for a couple days now. But they kept going. There was something about it. They didn't want to leave. They hung in there. They were getting something that was so much more than what they were missing out on, which was food. And there are few things in this world, and the way I know that is just stop eating for like a meal or two, and all of a sudden that's all your mind is on. Sometimes you can be busy, sometimes I can be busy and literally forget to eat. It's like, I don't think I ate lunch today. But the moment I say, I'm not going to eat lunch today, I start to starve, right? You're just like, oh my God. And what's so funny, I can go like, I don't pay attention to it, but stuff like, if I just said, you know what, I don't think I'm going to eat bread, I would see bread everywhere. Your head would become a loaf of bread to me. I don't have to have it, but the moment I say I'm not going to, all of a sudden that's all you kind of think about, right? These folk here, there was something else going on, obviously. And they were willing to risk their well-being to be where they were. So, reason, and a reason's a good thing, and I encourage everybody to be reasonable. But there's this, so what does hungering for God look like? There's got to be an element of risk to it. Second thing is, they embraced uncertainty over predictability. I love reason, and I love predictability. Uncertainty makes me very anxious. Like, you don't know what's going to happen, what's going to take place. It's like, I'd really like to know before I sign up for something. Like, I want predictability. But hungering for God, there's going to be an element of uncertainty to it. That goes along with the territory. And obviously, I think you see this. They desired his presence over their own pleasure, which just means their own physical appetite. They didn't want to leave. You know why? Because I may miss something. But I'm hungry. I know. The kids are hungry. I know. We're away from home. I know. I mean, day 2, we're really hungry now. To the point of day 3, if we leave, I mean, literally, some folk may faint by the way. That we're that hungry. What was it? It was Jesus. Just, I don't want to leave. Do you hear what I hear? Sound like a Christmas carol, didn't it? Are you listening to what he's saying? I've never heard anything like this. Listen to the love in his voice. Listen to the compassion. I don't want to leave that. What if he says something that, my life has already been changed? I know I'm hungry. Yes, I know you're hungry. I know we got to, but his presence. And then what happened was they all got full. No, not only did they not walk away like, yeah, let's get somewhere, we got to go to eat. He could have just dismissed them a day or two before. Obviously, the Lord knew what was going to take place. The disciples didn't, and the crowd that gathered didn't. But they desired his presence. Dear church family, I long to see greater and greater works, or the manifestation of God's power. I long to see it in your life and in mine. I long for you to be able to say, I prayed this and this happened. And we prayed for those and that took place. And the Lord showed up here and the Lord showed up there. But what I long for the most is for you to become captured by his presence. And to be able to know it and sense it and feel it. Like feel it. Feel his love for you. I believe with all my heart, before you can love other people like the Lord has loved you, before you can love your family like that's a natural love anyway, I really do believe that there's a step, and I think it's more pronounced now in our day and time than it has ever been, and that is, do you feel God's love for you? Everybody in this room's got a different frame of reference. Everybody listening to me online, you got a different frame of reference for that question. Do you feel God's love for you? Or do you think that God would love you more if you could do a little better? While you were yet a sinner, he died for you. Jesus can't love you more. And the love that he has for you cannot be measured. All of that is going toward you. But I let him down and I disappointed him and I fell. His love for you is like a tsunami, a tidal wave. It's not going to stop. It may not, because of the way you're wired and the way you were raised and the way you're, like you see the world or whatever, it might be hard to accept that. But his love for you and understanding that and feeling that, let him walk into your room and love you. And that presence, when you know that we're in the presence of Jesus, and many of the great revivalists that you read after, the D.L. Moody's and stuff, and they all spoke of this. D.L. Moody said, I was baptized over and over and over again in God's love. It was one of them, it might have been Moody or Finney or one of those great revivalists of a couple hundred years ago said, it was so overwhelming that I had to ask God to withstay his hand or I would die because of his love. Not his wrath, his love. That's when we talk about the presence of Jesus. When you walk into a room and you know, because hopefully, prayerfully, you actually feel it with people, right? You can walk into some rooms and know that this is one of those reciprocal rooms. I'm going to get what I give. That's the transactions going on here. Sometimes that's at work, sometimes at other places. But there are some places that you can go. Hopefully, you go. And into the presence, maybe it's the presence of a parent or a grandparent. And you know, I walk into this place and I'm loved in this place. These folk love me, not because of what I do or what I've done. It's simply because of who I am. You experienced that the first moment you laid eyes on your baby, right? There's 16 other babies laying in there. But you got this, like, where did that love come from? It's like, yeah, these babies here are cute. But this one I die for. This one, I don't tell you what I do to other people to try to hurt this one, but I mean, it's like, where does that come from? Now, multiply that by hundreds of thousands, and you have God's love for you. Just because you walked into the room, he said, man, now that guy, that girl right there, oh my gosh. Satan comes along and says, yeah, but they're this, and they've done this, and no. That one's mine. That's the presence of Jesus, and that's what these folk felt. That's why they said, I don't want to leave this. Are you kidding me? Do you hear him? Do you feel that while we're here listening to, the disciples on Emmaus Road said, did our hearts burn within us while he was walking with us along the way? Like, I can't walk away from that. They were hungry for the things of the Lord. Here's the critical mistake a lot of us make, even though we agree with what I've said up to this point. And that is that we try to fit Jesus into our busy life. We love everything we just said about the love of the Lord and the love of God, and yes, being hungry for him, and I love all of that, but I got a pretty packed life already. And it's not bad stuff. It's like, I'm not trying to convince you to stop sinful things. It's just like, where does he fit into my already packed out life? And where is he in the priority list? This is a question we all should take some time to ask ourselves. Because if we're trying to fit him into our convenience and our comfort level, you're not going to get the best of having Jesus in your life. So, question and answer, how to get hungry? It's kind of difficult because the hunger has to be self-imposed. Kind of like going on a fast. It's one thing if you just don't have it. So I'm hungry because I don't have it and I'm not for sure where to get it. So I am hungry. But it's another thing if I have plenty, my life is full, but I'm going to purposely impose hunger so I can hunger for the things of the Lord. Think of this. James chapter 4, verse 8 says this, draw nigh to me, and I will draw nigh to you. This is the Lord. This is the promise of the Lord. You draw nigh to me. And again, that means something different for each of us. What does that look like? Draw nigh to me, the Lord said. Now, again, with my mind, the way I think, the moment you say draw near, I want to know how near is near. Like, is that 3 steps or is that 3 miles? Like, what's near to you? Because near is, it all depends. Woodstock can be near, but you could, but so could Northern Virginia be near if the comparison is between here and out in California somewhere. It's like, well, that's near. Well, that's, so it's all sort of relative. So when you say draw near to the Lord, what does that look like? Well, he doesn't describe it because it's going to be something different for each of us. Here's the beautiful promise. The Lord said, you draw near and I'll draw near to you. And you draw near to me and I'll draw near to you. Now, here's the thing you have to understand is the further I get away from where I'm used to, the more kind of like anxious I get. And the more awkward it gets for you, for me coming out here, getting closer and closer to you. I understand that. So it's going to look different for each of us. But it's a beautiful promise. And your near is not my near. But there should be a question that we all want to ask ourselves. Is like, how in my life could I demonstrate something that says, Lord, I'm trying to draw near to you? What does that look like? And putting him at a higher and higher mark on the priority. What does hungry not look like? Proverbs chapter 27 and verse 7 says this, one who is full loathes. That's like detests, like hates. One who is full loathes honey or the honeycomb. But to one who is hungry, everything bitter is sweet. You know, have you ever like missed a few meals and then you ate somewhere and it wasn't that great, but oh my gosh, you thought this was oh, that was delicious. It really wasn't. It was just the fact that you're just that hungry. And that's what this it said. When you're not full, when you're hungry, even bitter things can take. I mean, it's like, oh, that's good. But if you're full, to the point that you don't even want something sweet. In the Solomon's day, honey was the sweetest thing you could put in your mouth. Sweeter than the artificial sweeteners today. Like, nobody turns honey and the honeycomb down in this day, unless you're full. For me, the same equivalent is like ice cream cake. So there's full, but then there's full with ice cream cake. I say, no, I'm full. I can't have any more steak, baked potato. Oh, gosh, I'm full. Want some ice cream cake? Well, yeah, I can take a piece of ice cream cake. So I really wasn't full. I had room. But now, if I turn down the ice cream cake, you say, hey, call 911 because he's about to explode. That's full. That's full. The challenge is, it's a blessing. The blessing is we in the Western civilization, in America in particular, we're full. Full of food, full of stuff, full of things. Our life is just full. Just full. We're not desperate for much. The whole idea of give us this day our daily bread. Most of us have enough food in our homes to feed us for days and weeks and sometimes even months. The idea of daily bread, that's a question for a large portion of the world. That's not us. And so we're full. We have a whole lot of stuff, in so much that we might even turn our nose up or just feel nauseated at the thought of something super sweet like Jesus. It's like, yeah, oh, I know. I mean, I look at that dessert and I think, I know, I should want that, but I'm full. Dear friend, we're too full. We're too full. So what do we got to do? We got to self-impose some hunger. We got to take some time, get alone with the Lord and ask ourselves, like, Lord, what in my life can I just set aside for a little while to where I can take that draw nigh to me thing, to give you a chance to draw nigh to me then. Here is, if the message is somewhat convicting, I want to end up on this note here. If you're not hungry but know that you should be, like, I'm not as hungry as I was or used to be. I'm not hungry like I used to be, or I'm not, but I know I should be. That I know I should be, that's a great thing. Don't discount that. Because that in and of itself is a sign of hunger. You see, the thing worse than this is not even feeling anything. I don't feel, because maybe me talking to you about hungering for God, there might be something about that feels convicting. Because I'm not as hungry as I used to be. Dear friend, hear me. Okay, if it's convicting, let it be convicting. It's convicting for me. But the beautiful thing is, conviction is a beautiful thing. It means you're still feeling something. That means the pilot light hasn't gone out. The embers are still there. God's still at work. The fact that you're convicted by about your relationship with Him and feeling the presence of God in your life and desiring something more, that's a beautiful thing. Don't discount that. So don't walk out thinking, I used to be, but boy, I know I'm not and I should be. Praise God. That's a wonderful, beautiful, beautiful thing. Take that to the Lord and understand that yes, there is something still here. The Lord's still at work. I'm not as hungry as I used to be for the Lord or the things of the Lord, but I know I probably should be. So and Jesus would say, you know what? I can work with that. Draw nigh. Take a step. and I'll take a step to you. Before you know it, there'll be some things. There are going to be denial. He wants to follow me, must deny himself. There's going to be some denial. There's going to be some confession. There's going to be some like, Lord, I need to get right with this, right? It's going to be a part of it. But it's a beautiful thing because he desires to draw near to you. And you'll find yourself in a place to where you'll say, yeah, I know I should reason this out a little bit more, but man, I do not want to leave this moment. The Lord's doing something in my life, in my family's life, and this is a beautiful thing. I feel uncertain. There's some risk here involved, but my goodness, how can I walk away from the presence of Jesus so strong in my life and go back to where I was? Would you bow your heads with me, please, for just a moment? And I'm going to ask you, after we pray, to stick around for just a second. I'm trying to be mindful, certainly, of the time. But here's what the Lord laid on my heart this morning, thinking about just this moment. I asked the Lord, Lord, how do you want me to close that thought down? And the word that came to me was just healing. Healing. Folks that within the sound of your voice, either in the room or online, many of them need healing. Some physical healing, some emotional healing, some relational healing. And just ask the folks that if you could pray for them. And I want to do that now. So you would just, between me and you, and I'm not going to call you out, I'm not going to come to you, and I'm not setting you up for something else to come forward and any of that. I just want to pray for you. But if you would just say, yeah, Randall, I do need healing. There's something physically in my body that I need healing for. Or there is an emotional damage that I need to heal from. Maybe it's recent hurt. Maybe it's long-standing. Or there's some relations in my life that it seems to be beyond a simple conversation that I need healing for. I wouldn't mind me enough, Randall enough to know about it just to pray for me in this moment. If you just slip your hand up and right back down, could I pray for you? God bless you. Several of us. The Lord sees the hands. And I know maybe sometimes even he sees your heart, even if you didn't have the courage or didn't want to lift your hand. The Lord's not going to hold that against you. But I think it's a beautiful thing. Jesus stopped the procession, if you remember, when the lady touched the hem of his garment. And he wasn't going to let her get away without saying, yeah, that was me. I need that. And so to me, that's this moment. Father, we come to you, asking you, Lord, to show us in our lives the places where we've gotten comfortable with ourselves. Show us the places, Lord, in our life where we've gotten full of ourselves. We've gotten full of this world. And Lord, hearing about the kingdom, hearing about your presence, hearing about fullness of the Holy Spirit, and all of that, Lord, just almost seems to be a rumor at this point from where we used to be. And here we find ourselves, Lord, here in this moment. So Jesus, I ask you that you would show yourself this afternoon in this space by healing. Not a person that raised their hand would walk out of this room the same. Jesus, if you were here in the flesh, everyone would have their needs met. We would all walk out satisfied, and there would be leftovers because of the gracious hand of Jesus. And Jesus, you said that it is better that you go away, that you could send a comforter. And so I'm standing here 2,000 years later, Lord, knowing that I'm at no disadvantage because of your physical absence. because you're in this room, in this place right now. So, Father, I ask you to heal. Physically. Lord, I ask you to heal and to begin the healing process emotionally. I'm not saying that there may not be some counseling and some therapy and some long talks with a spiritual listener. But Lord, I know that you can do the miracle in this moment right now, to where we know, Lord, that we were in your presence. And Father, I realize the relational healing that needs to take place usually, Lord, always has to do with another person who may not be listening and they're not here. And we just bring it to you. We bring it to you, Lord, like a little kid who just makes a mess. And it's beyond, I don't know how to fix it. It's all tangled up. And I just bring it to the God who loves me more than I can comprehend myself. And I hand it over to you, and I just say, Jesus, please fix this. I pray, Lord, that you would work in this room right now just that way. In your name, Lord, I ask these things. Amen. Amen. I hope it can be a help and a blessing to you. And as weird as it sounds, let me